Hello and welcome to Oak Tree English Poetry Livestream. One of my friends, a man I respect and admire greatly, requested or suggested that I did one of these live streams for children. Therefore, I have selected some poems which children will enjoy. I hope that parents will be watching them with them. So, let's kick straight off with the Jumblies. The Jumblies, who went to sea in a sieve. They went to sea in a sieve, they did. In a sieve they went to sea. In spite of all their friends could say, on a winter's morn, on a stormy day, in a sieve they went to sea. And when the sea turned round and round, and everyone cried, "You'll all be drowned," they called aloud, "Our sieve ain't big, but we don't care a button, we don't care a fig. In a sieve we'll go to sea." Far and few are the lands where the Jumblies live. Their heads are green and their hands are blue. They went to sea in a sieve. They sailed away in a sieve, they did. In a sieve they sailed so fast, with only a beautiful pea-green veil tied with a ribbon by way of a sail to a small tobacco pipe mast. And everyone said, who saw them go, "Oh, won't they soon upset, you know, for the sky is dark and the voyage is long, and happen what may is extremely wrong in a sieve to sail so fast." Far and few are the lands where the Jumblies live. Their heads are green and their hands are blue, and they went to sea in a sieve. The water it soon came in, it did. The water it soon came in. So to keep them dry, they wrapped their feet in a pinky paper all folded neat, and they fastened it down with a pin. And they passed the night in a crockery jar, and each of them said, "How wise we are! Though the sky be dark and the voyage be long, yet we never can think we were rash or wrong, while round in our sieve we spin." Far and few are the lands where the Jumblies live. Their heads are green and their hands are blue, and they went to sea in a sieve. And all night long they sailed away. When the sun went down, they whistled and warbled a moony song to the echoing sound of a coppery gong in the shade of the mountains brown. "Oh, Timballo, how happy we are when we live in a sieve and a crockery jar. And all night long in the moonlight pale we sail away with a pea-green sail in the shade of the mountains brown." Far and few are the lands where the Jumblies live. Their heads are green and their hands are blue, and they went to sea in a sieve. They sailed to the western sea, they did, to a land all covered with trees, and they bought an owl and a useful cart, and a pound of rice and a cranberry tart, and a hive of silvery bees. And they bought a pig and some green jackdaws, and a lovely monkey with lollipop paws, 40 bottles of Ringbo-Ree, and no end of Stilton cheese. Far and few are the lands where the Jumblies live. Their heads are green and their hands are blue, and they went to sea in a sieve. And in 20 years they all came back, in 20 years or more, and everyone said, "How tall they've grown, for they've been to the lakes and the Torrible Zone and the hills of the Chankly Bore. And they drank their health and gave them a feast of dumplings made of beautiful yeast. And everyone said, if we only live, we too will go to sea in a sieve to the hills of the Chankly Bore." Far and few are the lands where the Jumblies live. Their heads are green and their hands are blue, and they went to sea in a sieve. That was written by a gentleman called Edward Lear, who's most famous for The Owl and the Pussy. The Owl and the Pussycat went to sea in a beautiful pea-green boat. They took some honey and plenty of money, which wrapped up in a £5 note. That one. Edward Lear was, very interestingly, once the tutor to Queen Victoria. There you go. Now, I have previously read something by Hilaire Belloc. I think I read Matilda, who told lies and was burnt to death. Also Jim, who ran away from his nurse and was eaten by a lion. I have a similarly uplifting and joyful tale now called Sarah Bing, who could not read and was tossed into a thorny hedge by a bull. Hilaire Belloc. Some years ago you heard me sing my doubts on Alexander Bing. His sister Sarah now inspires my jaded muse, my failing fires. Of Sarah Bing the tale is told, how when the child was 12 years old, she could not read or write a line. Her sister Jane, though barely 9, could spout the catechism through, and parts of Matthew Arnold too. While little Bill, who came between, was quite unnaturally keen on Athalie by Jean Racine, but not so Sarah, not so Sal. She was a most uncultured girl who didn't care a pinch of snuff for any literary stuff, and gave all the classics and all a miss. Observe the consequence of this. As she was walking home one day, upon the fields across her way, a gate securely padlocked stood, and by its side a piece of wood, on which was painted plain and full, "Beware the very furious bull." Alas, the young illiterate went blindly forward to her fate, and ignorantly climbed the gate. Now, happily, the bull that day was rather in the mood for play than goring people through and through, as bulls so very often do. He tossed her lightly with his horns into a prickly hedge of thorns, and stood by laughing while she strode and pushed and struggled to the road. The lesson was not lost upon the child, who since has always gone a long way round to keep away from signs and whatever they may say, and leaves a padlock gate alone. Moreover, she has wisely grown, confirmed in her instinctive guess that literature breeds distress. I'm sure that none of you are like Miss Sarah Bing, and I'm sure you all love reading. Reading is one of those things that is taught by teachers at school. God bless those teachers. One of those teachers was once Michael Rosen. No, I've got him mixed up. I don't know whether Michael Rosen was ever a teacher. Don't quote me on that. However, Michael Rosen did write some great poems, notably Chocolate Cake, full of brilliant onomatopoeic words. Onomatopoeia is a literary device, a thing that writers do to describe a sound by making words that sound like that sound. For example, Michael Rosen wrote this poem. It's called Don't. Don't. Don't do. Don't do. Don't do that. Don't pull faces. Don't tease the cat. Don't pick your ears. Don't be rude at school. Who do they think I am? Some kind of fool? One day they'll say, don't put toffee in my coffee. Don't pour gravy on the baby. Don't put beer in its ear. Don't stick your toes up his nose. Don't put confetti on your spaghetti. And don't squash peas upon your knees. Don't put ants in your pants. Don't put mustard in the custard. Don't chuck jelly at the telly. And don't throw at a computer. Don't throw fruit at a computer. Don't what? Don't throw fruit at a computer. Don't what? Don't throw fruit at a computer. Who do they think I am? Some kind of fool. Now, hopefully, none of you have experienced being told off by saying, don't. However, one thing you may have been told is to be aware of stranger danger. Don't go off with a stranger unless you know them very well. Probably nice to smile at them, hello, and walk on by. Now, some people who didn't take this seriously once met a walrus and a carpenter. The sun was shining on the sea, shining with all his might. He did his very best to make the billows smooth and bright. And this was odd because it was the middle of the night. The moon was shining sulkily because she thought the sun had got no business to be there after the day was done. "It's very rude of him," she said, "to come and spoil the fun." The sea was wet, as wet could be. The sands were dry as dry. You could not see a cloud because no cloud was in the sky. No birds were flying overhead. There were no birds to fly. The walrus and the carpenter were walking close at hand. They wept like anything to see such quantities of sand. "If this were only cleared away," they said, "it would be grand. If 7 maids with 7 mops swept it for half a year, do you suppose," the walrus said, "that they could get it clear?" "I doubt it," said the carpenter, and shed a bitter tear. "Oh, oysters, come and walk with us," the walrus did beseech. "A pleasant walk, a pleasant talk along the briny beach. We cannot do with more than 4 to give a hand to each." The eldest oyster looked at him, but never a word he said. The eldest oyster winked his eye and shook his heavy head, meaning to say he did not choose to leave the oyster bed. But 4 young oysters hurried up, all eager for the treat. Their coats were brushed, their faces washed, their shoes were clean and neat. And this was odd because, they hadn't any feet. 4 other oysters followed them, and yet another 4. And thick and fast they came at last, and more and more and more, all hopping through the frothy waves and scrambling to the shore. The walrus and the carpenter walked on a mile or so, and then they rested on a rock conveniently low, and all the little oysters stood and waited in a row. "The time has come," the walrus said, "to talk of many things, of shoes and ships and sealing wax, of cabbages and kings, and why the sea is boiling hot, and whether pigs have wings." "But wait a bit," the oysters cried, "before we have our chat, for some of us are out of breath, and all of us are fat." "No hurry," said the carpenter. They thanked him much for that. "A loaf of bread," the walrus said, "is what we chiefly need. Pepper and vinegar besides are very good indeed. Now if you're ready, oysters dear, we can begin to feed." But not on us," the oysters cried, turning a little blue. "After such kindness, that would be a dismal thing to do." "The night is fine," the walrus said. "Do admire the view." "It was so kind of you to come, and you are very nice." The carpenter said nothing but, "Cut us another slice. I wish you were not quite so deaf. I've had to ask you twice." "It seems a shame," the walrus said, "to play them such a trick, after we've brought them out so far and made them trot so quick." The carpenter said nothing but, "The butter's spread too thick." "I weep for you," the walrus said. "I deeply sympathize." With sobs and tears he sorted out those of the largest size, holding his pocket handkerchief before his streaming eyes. Oh, oysters," said the carpenter, "you've had a pleasant run. Shall we be trotting home again?" But answer came there none. And this was scarcely odd, because they'd eaten every one. At this point, some of you are saying, "But why did they do that? Oh, why did they eat the oysters?" Etc. I encourage you to ask your parents lots of questions. It's a good thing to do. It's the way that we learn. It's the Socratic method. It's brilliant. Do it, do it, do it. Ask lots of questions. In fact, here's some advice from Rudyard Kipling, my favorite poet, called 6 Honest Serving Men. By the way, I didn't hear this until I was at university the second time. So seriously underrated poem. I keep 6 honest serving men. They taught me all I knew. Their names are what and why and when and how and where and who. I send them over land and sea. I send them east and west. But after they have worked for me, I give them all a rest. I let them rest from 9 till 5, for I am busy then, as well as breakfast, lunch and tea, for they are hungry men. But different folk have different views. I know a person small. She keeps 10 million serving men who get no rest at all. She sends them abroad on her own affairs from the second she opens her eyes. 1 million hows, 2 million wares, and 7 million whys. It's a great poem. Please learn it by heart. Now, we're going to turn to something else now. You may have heard of the musical Cats. Did you know that it was originally a book of poems by a chap called T.S. Eliot, whose nickname was Old Possum, and he wrote a book called Old Possum's Book of Cats. And these were picked up by Andrew Lloyd Webber and made into a musical. Well, one of the poems that he wrote was called Macavity, the Mystery Cat. And that's the one I'm going to read for you as a poem. If you feel the need to sing along, feel free. Macavity's a mystery cat. He's called the Hidden Paw, for he's the master criminal who can defy the law. He's the bafflement of Scotland Yard, the flying squad's despair. For when they reach the scene of crime, Macavity's not there. Macavity, Macavity, there's no one like Macavity. He's broken every human law. He breaks the law of gravity. His powers of levitation would make a fakir stare. And when you reach the scene of crime, Macavity's not there. You may seek him in the basement, you may look up in the air, but I tell you once and once again, Macavity's not there. Macavity's a ginger cat. He's very tall and thin. You would know him if you saw him, for his eyes are sunken in. His brow is deeply lined with thought. His head is highly domed. His coat is dusty from neglect. His whiskers are uncombed. He sways his head from side to side with movements like a snake. And when you think he's half asleep, he's always wide awake. Macavity, Macavity, there's no one like Macavity, for he's a fiend in feline shape, a monster of depravity. You may meet him in a by-street, you may see him in the square, but when a crime's discovered, then Macavity's not there. He's outwardly respectable. They say he cheats at cards, and his footprints are not found in any file of Scotland Yard. And when the larder's looted, or the jewel case is rifled, when the milk is missing, when other peak's been stifled, or the greenhouse glass is broken, and the trellis past repair, aye, there's the wonder of the thing, Macavity's not there. And when the Foreign Office find a treatise gone astray, or the Admiralty loses some plans and drawings by the way, there may be a scrap of paper in the hall on the stair, but it's useless to investigate. Macavity's not there. And when the loss has been disclosed, the Secret Service say, it must have been Macavity, but he's a mile away. You'll be sure to find him resting, or a licking of his thumb, or engaged in doing complicated long division sums. Macavity, Macavity, there's no one like Macavity. There never was a cat of such deceitfulness and suavity. He always has an alibi, and 1 or 2 to spare. At whatever time the deed took place, Macavity wasn't there. And they say that all the cats whose wicked deeds are widely known, I might mention Mungo Jerry, I might mention Griddlebone, are nothing more than agents for the cat who all the time just controls their operations. The Napoleon of crime. Now, Many of you know this little chap. This, of course, is Winnie the Pooh. And this is my daughter's Winnie the Pooh. And I have her permission to use it. And he was written about by a chap called A.A. Milne for his son, Christopher Robin. Now, and he wrote this from the perspective of Christopher Robin Milne, Chris Milne, as he became. This is quite special for me because it was read at my uncle's wedding, a wedding which my uncle actually had asked me to write a poem for and perform. So it was very special for me. But this was not read by me, so I read it now. It's called Us Two by A.A. Milne. Wherever, I'll start that again. Benedict Cumberbatch is a very good Sherlock Holmes. Wherever I am, there's always Pooh. There's always Pooh and me. Whatever I do, he wants to do too. Where are you going today? Says Pooh. Well, that's very odd, because I was too. Let's go together, says Pooh, says he. Let's go together, says Pooh. What's twice 11? I said to Pooh. Twice what? Said Pooh to me. I think it ought to be 22. Just what I think myself, said Pooh. It wasn't an easy sum to do, but that's what it is, said Pooh, said he. That's what it is, said Pooh. Let's look for dragons, I said to Pooh. Yes, let's, said Pooh to me. We crossed the river and found a few. Yes, those are dragons all right, said Pooh. As soon as I saw their beaks, I knew. That's what they are, said Pooh, said he. That's what they are, said Pooh. Let's frighten the dragons, I said to Pooh. That's right, said Pooh to me. I'm not afraid, I said to Pooh. And I held his paw and I shouted, Shoo! Silly old dragons, and off they flew. I wasn't afraid, said Pooh, said he. I'm never afraid with you. So wherever I am, there's always Pooh. There's always Pooh and me. What would I do, I said to Pooh, if it wasn't for you? And Pooh said, True. It isn't much fun for one, but two can stick together, said Pooh, says he. That's how it is, says Pooh. Now, those of you who are at school will be probably familiar with the concept of a supply teacher. This time I have got it right. Alan Ehrlberg was a teacher. Definitely need this for this one. Alan Ehrlberg wrote The Supply Teacher. May I urge you not to take the advice of this poem. Here's the rule for what to do if ever your teacher has the flu, or for some other reason takes to her bed and a different teacher comes instead. When the visiting teacher hangs up her hat, writes the date on the board, does this or that, always remember you have to say this: Our teacher never does that, miss. When you want to change places or wander about or feel like getting the guinea pig out, never forget the message is this: Our teacher always lets us, miss. Then when your teacher returns next day and complains about the paint or clay, remember these words. You just say this: That other teacher told us to, miss. Don't do that. I had a fez a moment ago. There we go. There's a fez. I'm wearing the fez in honor of a comedian called Tommy Cooper. If you've come across him, great. If you haven't, ask your parents. If they haven't come across him, ask your grandparents. Tommy Cooper died on stage. He was a comedian, brilliant comedian. And I'm going to read a funny poem now. Well, maybe one you're familiar with is by a chap called Roald Dahl, who wrote the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and The Great Glass Elephant, and my favorite, the BFG. I love the BFG. This one comes from his collection called Revolting Rhymes and is the story of Little Red Riding Hood. As soon as Wolf began to feel that he would like a decent meal, he went and knocked on Grandma's door. When Grandma opened it, she saw the sharp white teeth, the horrid grin, and Wolfie said, "May I come in?" Poor Grandmama was terrified. "He's going to eat me up," she cried. And she was absolutely right. He ate her up in one big bite. But Grandmama was small and tough, and Wolfie wailed, "There's not enough. I haven't yet begun to feel that I have had a decent meal." He ran around the kitchen yelping, "I've got to have a second helping," then added with a frightful leer, "I'm therefore going to wait right here till little Miss Red Riding Hood comes home from walking in the wood." He quickly put on Grandma's clothes. Of course, he hadn't eaten those. He dressed himself in coat and hat. He put on shoes, and after that, he even brushed and curled his hair, then sat himself in Grandma's chair. In came the little girl in red. She stopped, she stared, and then she said, "What great big ears you have, Grandma." "Oh, the better to hear you with," the wolf replied. "What great big eyes you have, Grandma," said Little Red Riding Hood. "Oh, the better to see you with," the wolf replied. He sat there watching her and smiled. He thought, "Yeah, I'm going to eat this child. Compared with our old Grandmama, she's going to taste like caviar." Then Little Red Riding Hood said, "But Grandma, what a lovely, great, big, furry coat you have on." "That's wrong," cried Wolf. "Have you forgot to tell me what big teeth I've got?" "Ah, well, no matter what you say, I'm going to eat you anyway." The small girl smiles, one eyelid flickers. She whips a pistol from her knickers. She aims it at the creature's head, and bang, bang, bang! She shoots him dead. A few weeks later in the wood, I came across Miss Riding Hood. But what a change! No cloak of red, no silly hood upon her head. She said, "Hello, and do please note my lovely, furry, wolfskin coat." And that was, of course, Roald Dahl. I hope you have enjoyed this poetry live stream. I hope that you have enjoyed the poems. If you have any suggestions, please put them in the comments. If you have any hats, then please send them to me. If you have any, if you have enjoyed this, then please like the video. And if you would like to see more, then please subscribe to my channel. Click the little bell icon, and you'll see it. See when I do new live streams and new videos, and you can join me and you can comment and I can talk to you live on air, which would be lovely. However, if you didn't enjoy it, then please let me know why not in the comments and put a thumbs down, because it all helps with the algorithm. So thank you very much for your help. I hope you've enjoyed it, and until next time, have a wonderful day. Goodbye.